You didn't miss it, even if it feels like you did. There's a quiet kind of ache that no one talks about. The feeling of watching doors close, when your hands were finally ready to knock. You tried, you waited, you stayed faithful, and still, nothing opened. It almost convinced you it was over, that you'd taken too long, that the season passed while you were stuck in place. But what if that wasn't delay? It was protection? What if instead of being left behind, you were being kept behind because the place wasn't ready yet? Because your arrival was sacred, not rushed. There's a table being prepared, a place with your name on it, still warm from the presence of God, and nothing, no one has taken your seat. The path you thought was closing, it's shifting, unfolding like dawn. Slow, steady, quiet. But sure, this is not too late. This is right on time. So stay, breathe. There's something here for your soul to receive. Even now, you are being led. Even now, you are still in the story. And the next line is being written right where you are. You've wandered in circles, felt forgotten in places too quiet to be holy. You've watched others find their way while your path stayed hidden under fog. You tried to follow the signs. You prayed, listened, waited, but the silence only deepened. It's not that you lacked faith. It's that you couldn't see where to place it anymore. There's a pain in not knowing if you're still on the map. A question that hums beneath everything. Did I miss my moment? But heaven doesn't forget coordinates. God never misplaces what he marked as sacred. And you, even in your wandering, have never drifted beyond the reach of his design. Every step you thought was lost was logged. Every prayer you whispered in doubt was received. And the place you long for, that alignment, that clarity, that calling, was never random. It's always been waiting for the appointed time. You weren't overlooked. You were guided by a path too precise for human eyes to see. So take heart. You're not far from it now. In fact, you've never been closer. This channel, Calm Called, was created for moments exactly like this, to remind tired souls that they are seen, guided, and still deeply in God's story. If something inside you whispered, "This is for me," subscribe now, not just to follow, but to stay aligned with every next whisper of peace. There's a kind of tired that prayer can't explain. A kind of heaviness that lingers even after you've done everything right. You believed, you waited, you held on, until even hope felt like weight. And somewhere in that quiet ache, you almost let go. Not out of rebellion, but resignation. Not because you stopped believing, but because it hurt too much to keep waiting. But what if that moment, when your grip loosened, wasn't failure, but the threshold? There's a sacred shift that happens when we stop trying to force the door, when we collapse into God instead of performing for Him. You didn't break down, you bowed down. And that was the turning point. That place where you almost walked away, heaven marked it. Not as defeat, but as the moment your striving surrendered to something deeper. This isn't the end of your story. It's where the story begins to unfold. Not in your strength, but in your stillness. So stay with me. Let's walk this together. Because what's opening ahead was never meant to be found by force, only by faith. There's something sacred about being held back by heaven. But when you're in it, it rarely feels sacred. It feels like silence, like standing in the hallway while others are invited inside. You watched doors open for people who didn't wait like you did, who didn't pray like you did, who didn't break and rebuild the way you had to. And quietly, you wondered if God forgot, if maybe, just maybe, you were skipped. But heaven doesn't move on urgency. It moves on readiness. And sometimes, the highest form of favor looks like being held back until the right moment is born. You weren't denied. You were reserved. You were kept not for punishment, but for preservation. The right season isn't just about timing. It's about what you become while you wait. The root goes deep before the fruit ever shows, and no one sees the years beneath the surface. But God does, and He never wastes waiting. What you gained in the quiet, resilience, compassion, discernment, was never lost time. It was soil time. Now, the shift is beginning. The air around you knows it. You feel it in your bones, that something is finally aligning. This isn't you catching up. This is the season you were always meant to bloom in. Not a moment early, not one breath too late. So, release the timeline you thought you missed. Release the fear of being forgotten. And receive this truth instead. You were being kept for such a time as this. There's a lie that creeps in when delay stretches too long. It tells you that someone else took your place, that the opportunity passed you by, that what was meant for you was given to another. But heaven does not operate on scarcity. There is no shortage of purpose in the kingdom of God. What is yours, truly, divinely, eternally yours, cannot be stolen. No closed door can cancel it. No person can override it. No failure can erase it. Because the promise was never about possession. It was about alignment. And alignment is something no human hand can manipulate. You didn't lose what was yours. It's been waiting in stillness, just like you. You've feared the time you wasted. You've mourned missed windows. But grace doesn't follow clocks. It follows calling. And calling waits. Even now, the space that was marked for you is untouched. Not because it wasn't desired, but because it wasn't meant for anyone else to occupy. This truth is uncomfortable because it removes all blame. It silences comparison. It places you face to face with divine trust. Can you believe that what God promised is still on its way to you? That no detour, no delay has denied the destination? This doesn't mean everything will look the way you pictured it. But it does mean this: nothing that's yours, truly yours, can be taken. And maybe that's what peace sounds like. Not in everything going right, but in knowing you never had to fight to keep what heaven already sealed. No one sees the waiting. Not really. They see the breakthrough, the testimony, the outcome, but not the hallway where you stood in silence, hands open, heart weary, still showing up to hope. And yet, that is the most sacred part of your story. The waiting wasn't a void. It was a witness. It saw your quiet faith when no one applauded. It recorded every morning you got up and chose trust again, even when the delay hurt, even when the silence echoed louder than any promise, even when your soul whispered, I don't know how much longer I can do this. The weight was never passive. It was fertile, alive, working below the surface in ways you couldn't yet see. Every tear was counted, every disappointment witnessed and woven into something redemptive. You thought the weight was evidence that nothing was happening, but in heaven's view, it was where everything was taking root. Because here's the mystery. Faith isn't proven in answered prayer. It's proven in unanswered ones, in what you still believe when the sky stays quiet. That's the kind of faith that shifts spiritual atmospheres, that becomes a light for others, that invites divine alignment, not through performance, but presence. And now, the weight is testifying for you. It speaks of your endurance, your trust, your sacred refusal to give up, even when giving up felt easier. Heaven saw you, and more than that, heaven remembers. So don't diminish what you did in the dark. Don't rush past it, because what's opening now has been built on the foundation of those hidden hours. You waited well, and that was never wasted. Sometimes, belief doesn't break with a bang. It fades, quietly, softly, almost unnoticeably. One unanswered prayer, one unexpected detour, one closed door too many, and suddenly, what once felt certain becomes unsure. Not because you turned away, but because you were tired. Tired of hoping, tired of waiting, tired of being the one who always believes, even when the evidence disappears. But here's the invitation, spoken not with pressure, but with tenderness. Can you believe again? Not perfectly, not loudly, but just enough to whisper yes one more time. Because something is opening now. And this moment requires your participation, not your striving, but your agreement. God never demanded flawless belief, just a heart willing to say, even now, I trust you. Even with questions, even with scars, even with memories of when it didn't work out. Again, and you don't need to feel ready, you just need to be willing. To open your hands, to take one breath in the direction of hope. This is the turning point, not because everything is clear, but because you're willing to believe again, before it island. That's what opens the way. That's what shifts the atmosphere. That's what tells heaven, I'm still here, and I still believe you're good. So don't force it, just feel it. Let belief return, not like thunder, but like morning light. Soft, steady, sacred. You don't have to force this. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to hustle your way into what God already prepared. There's a peace that doesn't come after the breakthrough, but before it. It shows up, not when everything makes sense, but when you surrender the need to understand. The world told you to run, to prove, to build faster, try harder, stay louder. But heaven moves on a different rhythm, one rooted in trust, not tension. And maybe what's opening now isn't a giant leap, but a quiet return to the pace your soul was created for. Because peace is not the absence of movement, it's movement without anxiety. You were never meant to grind your way into divine timing. You were meant to walk with God, in step, in stillness, in sacred sync. And yes, that means releasing control. It means releasing urgency. It means breathing before building. But oh, how different everything feels when peace is your starting place. How light the burden becomes when you no longer carry the outcome. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply being invited to return to the rhythm of grace. This rhythm says, "I'll go where you go, Lord, and I won't run ahead of you." It says, "I trust that the place is already prepared. I just need to arrive rested." And that peace, it's available now, not later, not when you feel more spiritual. Now. So breathe, step softly, and let the next door open at the speed of surrender. When the door finally opens, there's a strange temptation to sprint, to make up for lost time, to prove you're ready, to run so fast that no one questions why it took so long to get here. But divine movement doesn't require acceleration. It requires reverence. You are not behind. You are arriving exactly on time for what heaven appointed. So start small, start sacred, not with fanfare, but with focus, with a heart tuned not to speed, but to spirit. Every sacred movement begins quietly, a whisper, a stirring, a simple yes. And that yes, however quiet, is enough to unlock the next step. You don't have to build the whole thing today. You don't have to see the full picture. You just have to trust that the one who called you is faithful to lead you, one sacred step at a time. This is a season of alignment, not performance. A season where small beginnings are not overlooked, they are honored. Remember this, the mustard seed was never meant to impress. It was meant to grow, slowly, steadily, securely. So don't despise small movements. Don't wait for clarity to feel heroic. The kingdom begins in unseen places, and so does restoration. Your next step may not feel grand. It might be quiet, hidden, gentle, but if it's spirit-led, it is holy. So take it, even if your hands tremble, even if your voice shakes, even if no one else sees it but God. Because when you step sacred, you move in rhythm with heaven, and that rhythm will carry you exactly where you were meant to go. There's a mystery we rarely speak of, the knowing that lives beneath our questions. That quiet pull towards something familiar, even when the path looks new. It's not always about discovering something brand new. Sometimes it's about remembering what your soul already knew. You've walked with God long enough to have felt this before. This nudge, this inner stirring, this sense that something sacred is calling you back into rhythm. And though the scenery may have changed, the presence is the same. The one who led you through the last valley is still leading now. You already know the way, not because you have it mapped, but because you know the voice. "My sheep hear my voice," he said, "and they follow me." So why does it feel unfamiliar? Because this time you've grown, and sometimes growth makes old places look different. Your perspective has changed, but the path is still marked. You don't need a detailed blueprint. You need sensitivity, willingness, a spirit that says, "Lord, I'll follow even here." Trust the signs you once dismissed. Trust the peace that doesn't require explanation. Trust the still, small voice that keeps calling you forward. This is not your first step of faith. It's a continuation, a deepening, a return. And you are not lost. You're simply being reminded that the compass has always been within. So slow down, Breathe in and listen. You already know this frequency. And if you walk it gently, you'll remember you were never really wandering. You were circling back to the way you were always meant to walk. It's not just the place that's been prepared. It's you. Every moment you questioned, every prayer that felt unanswered, every delay that made you ache was part of the shaping. You didn't just wait, you were formed. You didn't just survive, you softened, you listened, you aligned. And now, the readiness in you matches the readiness of what's opening. The timing is no longer a mystery. It's a convergence. The inner and the outer, the promise and the person. This is where faith meets fulfillment, not in spectacle, but in sacred harmony. You're not entering as who you were. You're entering as who you became, through every quiet yes. And the place, oh, it's more than you imagined. Not because it looks how you pictured, but because it feels like home to the soul you've grown into. No striving is needed, no pretending, just presence, just alignment, just trust. You can walk in with peace now, not to prove anything, not to earn anything, but to inhabit what was always yours in the right season. This is the sacred synthesis, where all the waiting, all the wondering, all the not yets finally make sense. You see it now. The delays were mercy. The detours were design. The ache was preparation. You were never disqualified. You were destined, and destiny is never rushed. So breathe it in. This place, this peace, wasn't just saved for you. It was shaped by your becoming. You've waited long. You've listened deep. You've returned to a stillness many don't know how to find. And now, the way opens. But this re-entry, it doesn't ask for performance. It doesn't require noise, urgency, or explanation. It invites reverence. It invites peace. You don't have to rush. You don't have to fear. You are not stepping into something foreign. You are returning to what was always yours. Saved for you. Protected for this moment. So let's speak this blessing over your spirit, softly, like the wind that only moves what's ready. A prayer for re-entry. God of sacred timing, thank you for holding this place for me. Thank you for every unseen layer you prepared while I waited. Thank you for not rushing me, for knowing I'd be ready, exactly when the way opened. I return now, not in fear, but in faith, not to prove myself, but to walk with you, step by step, day by day, at the rhythm of peace. May I trust what I carry now. May I honor the quiet work you did in me while no one else was looking. May I enter gently but fully, wherever this next place is, a relationship, a calling, a healing, a return. May I inhabit it with grace, with courage, with holy rest. I bless the door. I bless the way. I bless the waiting that shaped me. And I bless the promise that waited too. Amen. If your spirit felt seen here, if something opened in you today, stay close. This journey isn't one to walk alone. Not anymore. Subscribe now to Calm Called, so that when the next whisper of peace comes, it finds you ready to receive it. You haven't missed your moment. You were being prepared for it. And now, it's opening.